Okay, good morning, guys. Happy Monday. Hopefully, you guys had a nice weekend. We are going to talk about the skeletal system today. I'll wait for a few more people to come on. Looks like I don't have anybody in here yet, but one person so far. Give a few minutes to just get started here. So, good morning. Happy Monday. Hopefully, you guys had a nice weekend. And we are going to talk about the skeletal system today. So, that's kind of what we are gearing towards. We only got one person in here right now. A couple people. All right, we got Veryl. Hi, Veryl. How are you? How was your weekend? Hopefully, you had a nice weekend. Hi, Talon. How are you? Talon and Veryl. Nice to see you guys in here. All right. Good job for checking in. Good. I'm glad you had a nice weekend, Veryl. All right. Same with you, Talon. And we're going to talk about the skeletal system today. So I'm going to wait about another minute or so, and then we'll get started with this week's lecture and activities. Did you guys have a chance to watch the video? Mr. Canelu and I put a video out. All right. Hi, Soraya. Good to see you in here as well, too. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. Hopefully you guys had a chance to watch a video Mr. Canelu and I put out. I put it on the Teams page, and it was on the skeletal system. So you might have saw our dance moves on there. So I'm not too sure if you saw our skeleton dance there, with Mr. Canelu. So hopefully you had a chance to watch it. You could go back and watch it. It's on our Microsoft Teams page. Okay. All right. Excellent. I'm going to get started here in about another minute or so, just waiting for a couple more people to check in. And then we're going to talk about the skeletal system for today. Okay. All right. So that's kind of that's our new topic this week. And if you did not turn in your project, get your project turned in on the circulatory system. That was the one due last week. Okay. All right. So I got a good many of those turned in for those students that have been checking in. So good job on those. Okay. I'm getting this. All right, looks like I got enough people in here. Hi, Kyle. Hi, Veryl. Hi, Soraya, Talon. Thanks for checking in. Okay, we're going to get started with the skeletal system for today. So we're going to introduce this one here. And the parts of the skeletal system, you probably know some of these things. Just basic parts of the skeletal system are bones, skeletons within our body. Joints, which connect into bones. Okay, we'll talk about what those are too. And cartilage, which is like the soft tissue between a lot of the bones and the joints. We'll talk about what cartilage is. And ligaments, which attach usually bone to bone. Okay, or what they call ligaments. And tendons actually connect bone to the muscle. Okay, so we'll talk about those as well. So those are some of the main parts of the skeletal system: bones, joints, cartilage, ligaments, tendons, and so on. And the skeletal system is divided into two sections. Okay, the two sections are called the axial skeleton and one called the appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton consists of these three main areas: your skull, which is your cranium; your spinal cord, which goes, or spinal column, which goes connects your skull, all right, all the way down to your backbone, all right, and your rib cage, okay, your chest area. That's called the axial skeleton, those three areas. Now, the appendicular skeleton is your limbs, okay, your arms and your legs, and your pelvis going down your legs. So that's the appendicular skeleton there. So, okay, looks like a couple questions so far. Did you get my project? Yes, I believe I got yours, Val. Thanks for checking in here too. Same with Allie, same with Mia. All right, thanks for checking in as well. So I believe I did get all those projects that I know I got yours, Val. I do see your name on my list here that I got yours. So thank you for that. Okay. All right, so don't ask me that at this time. Let's focus our questions on. Just email me those about the project, if I got it or not, because I'm not going to go through my entire list. If you got it, just email me. If you got my project, you can just send me an email or a quick message on Teams. Okay. All right. So just ask questions pertaining to the skeletal system, what I'm talking about here. So I'm only going to answer questions on the skeletal system right now. Okay, since that's what I'm talking about. All right. So functions of bones. Okay, here's some of the main functions of bones. support the body. They protect our organs, especially the soft organs, okay, like your liver, your heart, some of those areas, like around the rib cage. Um, Movement, all right. The functions of bone also help provide movement due to the attached skeletal muscles. So they do help in movement and storage of minerals and fats. Okay, so that's another function that bones do. And they also produce blood cell formations. So the bones help with the blood cell formations as well. So those are some of the main important functions of bones: support, protection, movement, storage of minerals, and blood cell formation. Okay, all right. Moving on with some things on the body or bones here. The skeletal system or the skeleton has 206 bones exactly in an adult human body. You have more bones when you're younger, especially you guys around your age, 12, 13 years old, 11 to 13 is most of your ages in that in your middle school area ages there. So your bones are still growing, and they're eventually going to fuse into other bones and connect into other bones, and you'll eventually have, when you're an adult human, you'll have about 206 bones in the body. So there's two types of bones. All right, there's a bone called compact bone. That's the outermost layer of the bone, and that's usually the hardest part of the bone. Okay, they are called compact bones. And then there's called what they call spongy bone. And these are small needle-like pieces of bone. Okay, and they have many open spaces, so they kind of like have little spaces between. They call that spongy bone, and that's like more the interior, the inside of the bone. So the compact, the outside of the bone is harder. The inside part is called spongy bone, letting a lot of many open spaces within the bone there. Okay, now bones are classified by their shape. So I'm going to go over a couple different types of shape that they could be. The first one is called long bone. So bones are longer than they are wider, such as your arms, okay, and your legs. Those are known as long bones, okay. Short bones, all right, they're usually square in shape, like a cube, okay, and it could be like your wrist, okay, or ankle. Those would be considered short bones. Then you also have one called flat bones. Flat bones are usually, of course, flat and they're curved. So your skull would be one, all right, top of your head. Your sternum, which is in between your rib cage here, that's a flat bone. All right, and then you have another type of shape called irregular shape. So those are the odd shape bones, like your vertebrae. Your backbone is an irregular shape one, and same with your pelvis, which is like your hip bone. Okay, so those are irregular shape bones there. Okay, all right. Any questions so far? All right, Veryl and Soraya. Okay, so make sure you guys are following directions here on the chat here. I could see, guys, what you put up here. So just make sure you're keeping this um, related to the subject here. So please ask questions related to the skeletal system and less chat amongst yourselves right now, okay? Because I could see what you guys put up, okay? I'm just letting you know that, all right? All right, moving on to parts of the bone here, or shapes, all right? Now, there's also types of bone cells, all right? They call these, the mature bone cells are called osteocytes. And bone-forming cells are called osteoblasts. The word ostea means bone, the scientific name for it. So anytime you see osteoporosis, which is a type of bone disease, it means it's affecting with the bone. Osteoclasts are bone-destroying cells. So they break down bone matrix for remodeling and release of calcium. So bone remodeling is a process of both osteoblasts and osteoclasts, which are the bone-forming and bone-destroying parts of the cell. Okay, so the bone remodeling deals with osteoblasts and osteoclasts. Now, in the embryos, the skeleton is primarily cartilage. Okay, like on the tip of your nose, we're going to talk about cartilage. Due to development, much of the cartilage is replaced by bone. So cartilage remains in isolated areas like the bridge of your nose, even between your rib cage. There's cartilage there, and also between your joints, like your wrist and your elbow. There's cartilage there, your knee joint. So that's where cartilage is, that soft tissue that kind of relies between the bone. Okay. All right. So that's what that is. All right. Veryl, do you have a question? Do we do both halves? I don't know what you're talking about on that question. If you can elaborate on that question there. Okay, moving on. Okay. onto the skeleton here, and the axial and appendicular skeleton, like I was talking about. The axial skeleton, you got to know the difference between these two. This forms the longitudinal parts of the body, and it's divided into three parts. That's your skull, which is your head, your cranium, your vertebral column, which is your spine, backbone, and your rib cage. All right, that's what this whole area consists of. The axial skeleton consists of those three main parts: skull, vertebrae column, and rib cage. It supports and protects organs of the head, trunk, and the neck. Okay, so that's where those areas are included there. Okay. All right, now the appendicular skeleton, that's going to be your shoulder, your arms, and your legs. This includes both the bones of the limbs and the limbs and bones that anchor them to the axial skeleton. So they connect into your spinal cord, they connect into your the backbone. And what other area did I say? That was the head, the backbone, and the rib cage, I believe. So yeah, the rib cage would have been the other one. So like your arm bones, like your scapula and your clavicle, these areas right here, they're going to be part of your, they're going to be on your next part of your appendicular skeleton. So they call that pectoral girdle and the appendicular skeletal. It's like this bone right in here, and scapula, which is your back shoulder bone. Okay, so those would be under the pectoral girdle under the appendicular skeleton. Now the upper limbs are your arms. Okay, the pelvic girdle is the sacrum or coccyx, and the lower limbs are the legs. Okay, so another name for the joint is called an articulation. Articulations are where joints meet and connecting and formed. Okay, is what they are. All right, so joints, like I was saying, or articulation is a place where two bones come together. So there's some different types of joints here that I'm going to go over next. All right, the first one is called the fibrous joint. All right, or an immovable joint, and this connects bones. All right, and there's no movement. So the skull and the pelvis would be considered an immovable joint, like your head and your hip bone. They're immovable. Okay, they're not going to have motion other than turning your head, which is different. You have them; they stay still. Cartilaginous joints are slightly movable. Okay, these are bones attached by cartilage with little movement, and that's usually between your spine, okay, your backbone, and your ribs. Like I said, there's some cartilage there that have some slight movement. Then you have one called synovial. They're free-moving joints. Now, the synovial joint is there's much more movement than the cartilaginous joints. So cavities between bones are filled with fluid, and these fluids help lubricate and protect the bones, is what they actually do. Okay. All right, let's see. Looks like I have a couple questions here. Mia, looks like you asked here half of the skeleton. Yes, that's what your project will be doing. I'm going to go over the project part of it at the end of this. You could either do axial or appendicular or upper or lower. I'm going to kind of go over that. Okay, I'll be talking about that too, Val. So hold on to the end here. I'm almost done presenting some things to you on the basics of the joints here. So I'm almost done. Okay, and then I'll talk about the project and we can question and answer some things here. Okay, all right, moving on. All right, so I said the synovial joints are free-moving joints, okay? That would be like your ball and socket joint, like your shoulder when you're throwing a baseball or an object, okay? There's other ones called a plane joint, hinge joint, and pivot joint, how they move, and we're going to talk about some of those ones there too. And these are types of joints for movement. So the hinge, think of a door hinge. When you open a door and close a door, there's a hinge, right? So like your elbow and your knee is a hinge. So when you're moving that, that's on a hinge. A hinge joint allows extension and retraction of an appendage. So think of it as a door opening and closing. So your knee, when you bend your knee, when you bend your elbow, so you're flexing your bicep, all right, that would be a hinge joint there, okay? All right, these are free moving joints. Now, the next one, like I was just talking about, was a ball and socket. That's your shoulder joint. So whenever you throw a baseball or you're doing stretches, okay, a ball and socket joint allows for radial motion almost in any direction, okay? They're found in the hips and the shoulder. So even too, when you're stretching with your legs, they're found in your hips. It's more common think about throwing a baseball or throwing an object because of the rotation that your arm makes. Okay, that's called a ball and socket joint. Okay, another one is called a gliding joint. Okay, in a gliding joint or plane joints, bones slide past each other. Okay, so your mid-carpal or mid-tarsal joints are gliding joints, like your hand and your feet, like your wrist. Okay, those are gliding joints, so they slide past one another. Okay, so that's what those ones are. All right, and the last one here I have is called a saddle joint. Okay, now this type of joint occurs when the touching of surfaces of two bones have two bones have both concave and convex regions with the shapes of two bones. All right, so they complement one another, allowing the range of motion. So think of your thumb as a saddle joint, as the movement would move with your thumb back and forth there. That's known as a saddle joint. Okay, so those are some of the free movable joints: saddle, gliding, ball and socket, and hinge joint. Those are some of the free moving are the types of joints that move. Like I was saying, the ones that don't move is called an immovable joint, a fibrous joint, like your skull and your pelvis. Slightly movable, the ones that have cartilage between them. Okay, that was that soft tissue between the joints. Cartilage found in your nose and your ears, and then you have it between your ribs and your spinal column. So there's cartilage there. That's would be considered more of a slightly movable joint for those ones there. Okay. All right. I'm going to open up to some of you guys here on talking about your project here, and any questions. I'll do a little question review with you guys here as well too on some of these basic parts here. So looks like Val and Mia were asking about the parts that we're doing. Yes, you are doing either the upper torso, the upper parts of your body, okay, your shoulders, your skull, spinal cord column, or your lower parts of your body to identify and label. Okay, so that could be your femur, your tibia, your fibula, your leg bones. You could be researching those ones there. I'll go into some of those ones here as well. And then also, don't forget there's a brain pop due Friday on the skeleton just as well. Just the skeleton. It doesn't even say skeleton system. It's on the skeleton, so it talks about some of these same basic parts. Okay, so I just put that out there as well, along with the research. Now you can also do, other than the upper and lower parts of the torso, you could do the axial and appendicular skeleton. All right, let's see if we remember what those were. Who remembers what the axial skeleton consists of? Three parts that I went over earlier. Three areas. The axial skeleton consists of these three parts of bones. Let's see if anyone remembers that. You could type for the types of the appendicular skeleton, three types of bones, or three areas. If you remember what those are. Yeah, there's appendicular and there's axial. The first one is axial that we're going to learn about. I went over it, see if you paid attention on it. So the axial has three main parts. The axial skeleton. You want to research on the side, just type in axial skeleton and you might get a few that pop up. Okay, the vertebral column, the cranium, your skull, okay, and your rib cage. So your vertebral column, like your vertebrae, your rib cage area, and your skull, and your cranium. That's known as the axial skeleton. You could do that area as well. And the appendicular skeleton is everywhere else that connect to that. So that's going to be your arms, your shoulders, okay, all the way down to your legs, to your lower ends. Okay, so you could do axial. You could compare and contrast axial and appendicular skeletons there, or you could do the upper part of the body or lower part of the body, like the upper torso or the lower torso. Okay, so that's what could be included with this week's project here. Okay, and I'll be putting this out on Microsoft Teams. I just put the basics out to watch the video with me and Mr. Canaloo that we put out this morning. Okay, and then just kind of covering over some things here on the basics on the skeletal system itself. Okay, any other questions so far about bones? And before I ask some questions, I guess in more detail here. Any questions here? Okay, who could tell me what are some ways that what are some of the shapes that we classify bones as? There was four of them that I went over. Four shapes of bones, how they're classified. Four shapes of bones, how are they classified? No, Val, you don't have to do the whole skeleton. No. It's only the upper or lower parts. You pick one or the other, Val. Okay? So hopefully I answered your question there. So you pick either upper or lower or axial or appendicular, those two parts. Okay? You don't have to do the whole skeleton. So just one or the other. So who could tell me the four shapes of the how we classify the bone? What are the four shapes that I went over? See if you were paying attention. Okay, very good. Looks like Vero added in there. We had short, we had long, flat, and irregular. Very good. And Val, both of you guys got that correct. Very good. Can you guys give me an example of a long bone? What would be an example of a long bone? A long bone in the human body. Okay, the femur, very good. Femur would be considered one. Yep, very good. A leg or arm bone would be considered a long bone. How about a short bone? What would be considered as a short bone in the human body? A short bone, I think I gave you an example, a couple examples of a short bone. What would be considered a short bone in the human body? No, not the spine. The spine would not be considered a short bone. Spine's actually a pretty long bone itself. It goes all the way from down your backbone there. Um, that actually would be considered more of an irregular one, which we'll talk about next, which gave you an example. Okay, someone put arm, foot, finger. Very good. Actually, that would be considered your wrist and your ankles would be some short bones. Very good. How about a flat bone? What would consist of a flat bone? What would be a bone in your body would be considered a flat bone? Okay, we're getting some feedback here. Did someone say sternum? Nope, I didn't see sternum in there, but sternum, that's the area between your rib cage. Okay, that would be a flat bone. Okay, another flat bone would be considered as your skull, or your head, your cranium. All right, so that's a flat bone. How about an irregular bone? I gave you an example of your backbone. Someone said backbone earlier. So your vertebrae or backbone is an irregular shape. What's another one that might be an irregular shaped bone in your body? Does anyone know another that might be considered an irregular shaped bone? Okay, yeah, very good. Let's think Val put there the hip, very good, or the pelvis. You call that the pelvis, very good. All right, your hip, good job, Vero, as well. So, an irregular shaped bone, very good, excellent. All right. Um, what is the soft tissue between bone called? Like I was saying, the bridge of your nose, parts of your ribs, between your joints. There's a specific name for that. I said it quite a few times when I was talking about the bones here, the skeletal system. The soft tissue, you find it usually on the bridge of your nose, your ears. What is that called? It's usually found between joints of your body, parts of the rib area. Does anyone remember what that's called? Not bone marrow. Marrow. That's a good try. It's not bone marrow. Bone marrow itself. Yes, very good. Mia got that there. Very good. Cartilage. You probably heard of that before. Cartilage is that tissue, that soft tissue between joints, parts of the ribs, bridge your nose. Very good. So know what cartilage is as well. Okay. So I told you that the appendicular or the axial skeletons consist of the skull, the backbone, and the rib cage. All right. How about the appendicular skeleton? What can you tell me about the appendicular skeleton? What consists of some parts of the appendicular skeleton? So if the axial skeleton was your skull, your vertebrae, and your rib cage, what are some parts of the appendicular skeleton? What other areas might consist of the appendicular? So remember I said those three areas are the axial skeleton: skull, vertebrae column, rib cage. Appendicular are going to be what? Give me an example of where that might be. All right, Verrill says tendons. Those would be considered in parts of the include what? What other areas? I gave the three main areas of the axial skeleton. Where are the appendicular skeletons kind of located? What would be an example of one? Okay, very good. Val said arms and legs. Very good. Your arms, your upper arms, very good. And lower arms, along with your legs, lower legs. That would be, excuse me, that would be considered a appendicular skeleton, along with your clavicle and your scapula, your back shoulder blade. All right, that's called the pectoral girdle. That's also part of the appendicular skeleton. And your pelvic girdle, they call that the sacrum or coccyx area. That's kind of like your hip bone. So that's also included as your appendicular skeleton. So like I was saying, you could kind of do these parts of the body as well too. All right. Articulation. Another name for an articulation is what? What does the word articulation mean? I think I gave you that definition there as well. What's an articulation? That's more the scientific name for it. I'll give you a clue. It's where something meets or connects. Articulation. Okay, let's go try. What's an articulation? Where it's kind of where two things come together. I'm giving you a little bit of a clue. What two things might come together? Very good. Dylan got it. Nice job. It's a joint. Okay, that's where two bones come together. There's a place where two bones come together. All right. I'm going to go over a couple different types of joints with you guys and see if you remember these ones here. So we'll try to, I'll ask you the names of these and see if you remember them. All right. This type of joint would consist of your skull and your pelvis. You remember the name of that type of joint because there is no movement. What kind of joint would that be called? Remember, there's no movement in your skull or your pelvis. What would that be called? Okay, yeah, I'll repeat that there. I'll repeat that question. Your skull and pelvis are considered what kind of joint? Because there's no movement that connects these bones. Does anyone know what that's called? What kind of joint that would be called? There's no movement for this joint. The skull and pelvis are examples of this type of joint. There's no movement that connects to the bones. Vero, I think you said, okay, Talon said fixed. Fixed joint. No, it's not a fixed joint. It's a good try for Talon. Fibrous joint, very good. They call that a fibrous joint or an immovable. Immovable meaning not be able to move, or fibrous joint. Very good. So good job there, Val, on that. All right, this type of joint is slightly movable and a bone's attached movement like your spine and your ribs would be an example. What kind of joint would that be called? These ones are slightly movable joints and bones are attached by cartilage with little movement of the spine or ribs. What kind of joint is that called? Nope, that's a good try, Tal. It's not a lobe joint. I'll give you a clue. The word cartilage is in it, is in the name. Because remember, cartilage is that tissue between the joints, kind of hold them in place. Okay, fibrocartilage. All right, it's actually called a cartilaginous joint, is how you'd say it, and I'll spell it out over here so you can see it here. I'll put it on the toolbar here so you can see that. There you go, cartilaginous. That's how you say that one. All right. All right. And the last type of joint. This type of joint is a free moving joint. Okay. It moves like a ball and socket would be an example. So what's the name of this type of joint? It's free moving. Much of the movement has much more movement than a cartilaginous joint, and cavities between bones are filled with synovial fluid, and this fluid helps lubricate and protects the bone. So what is that type of joint called? Okay, synovial, very good. Good job, Val. Is a synovial joint. So that's what that is, a free moving joint. Now, there were some specific types of synovial joint that I went over here as well. This type of joint allows the extension or retraction of an appendage, such as your elbow. What was that called? Remember, I gave you an example of a door. A door has what? For opening and closing. In your knee, how your knee moves, and your elbow. What kind of joint was that? These are movable joints that I'm going over. These are the ones I went over just a little bit ago. So it's a movable joint. What is that called? And this type of joint allows extension and retraction of appendages, like your elbow moving. Okay, a specific type of joint, a movable joint. Same with your knee. When your knee bends, what is that type of joint called? Refraction means that it's moving back and forth. Okay, that's what that means, Val. What is a refraction? Extension and refraction. So kind of a back and forth. Okay, extend and come back. Retract means come back. So do you remember what type of joint that's called? It is a type of synovial joint, a free moving joint, but it's a specific kind. Think of a doorway. A door has something when it opens and closes, especially on the inner parts of the door that you don't see. What's that called? The scapula is a part of the back shoulder blade. That's a good try there, Val. That's more of a part than the type of joint that it is. So that's more of a type of bone that you're questioning there. Hinge, very good, Veril. It's a hinge joint, just like a door has a hinge, all right, for moving back and forth, opening and closing, just like your elbow and kneecap. It's a hinge joint. That's a free moving joint. Very good. All right, your next type of joint. All right, this allows radial motion in almost any direction. Okay, and they're found in your hips and your shoulders. So remember, I was giving an example of throwing a baseball or stretching your arm with your shoulder, and same with your hip, how you turn back and forth. Anyone remember that specific type of joint? This is another synovial joint, a free moving joint. What is this one called? I think someone mentioned it, half of it. I think Dylan had half that answer, but I think she was talking for the last question. All right. Yes, very good, Val. Socket joints, we call that ball and socket. Okay, ball and socket joint. Okay, good job. So that's a ball and socket joint. Good job. All right, and the next one I'm going to talk about. This is a type of joint that slides past one another. Think of your hands and your feet. What would that be consist of? Your hands and feet, as they think about like your wrist, your hands and your feet as you turn them. What kind of joint? This is another movable joint, another type of synovial joint. But what is that called? Okay. This type of joint slides past one another. Okay. These are found in your hands and your feet. What kind of joints are these? It's another movable joint. It is a synovial joint, Val. You're half right there. It is a synovial joint. It's a free moving joint. Okay. So this is a type of joint that slides past one another. A specific type of joint that I went over. What was that called? Slides back and forth. Guys, let's stay focused on here. I don't need. You could be using other resources to find this. Okay. Or just paid attention to some of the things I said. What type of joint is this called? It's a type of joint that slides past one another. These are called what? Yes, very good. It is a sliding or gliding joint is what I was looking for. Gliding or sliding joint. Okay? All right. So nice job on that question there. Okay? All right. So last one I have. Okay? Last question here. Um, this type of joint touches the surface of the two bones where the two bones complement one another, allowing wide range of movement. Your example would be your thumb. What kind of joint would that be consist of? Wide range of movement. How it turns like that. Your thumb. All right. Between the two bones, they complement one another for wide range of movement. So this is a specific joint of your thumb. What kind of joint is that called? I think somebody mentioned it earlier. Maybe Faith. Faith just checked in. It's not a hinge joint, but I think you said it earlier. Yes, very good. It is a saddle joint. Your thumb is considered a saddle joint. Very good. All right. Good job answering that there, Faith. All right. So those are some of the main types of joints that I went over. of the synovial joints, the free moving joints. I also went over the immovable joints, like your fibrous joints, your skull and your pelvis, um, and the cartilaginous or your slightly movable joints, like between your rib cage. I went over appendicular and axial skeleton. Remember, the axial skeleton is your head, your cranium, your rib cage, and your spinal column or vertebral column. And your appendicular is everywhere else, your shoulders, your arms, your legs, your pelvis. So those are the two main areas of the two types of skeletons, how they're divided. Okay. All right, the axial and appendicular skeleton. Went over cartilage, which is soft tissue between the joints and other parts of your body, between your like your nose and your ears. There's cartilage there. Whatever types of bone cells, osteocytes or mature bones, osteoblasts are bone forming cells, osteoclasts are bone destroying cells. All right, so how bones are formed. I went over the shapes of bones. They're classified by shape: long bone, short bone, flat bone, and irregular bone. Okay, and I went over the two main parts of bones. They're compact, for the is the outer hard layer of the bone, and spongy bones are the many open spaces, the more the interior parts of the bone. So they have small needle-like pieces of bone, so they're more spaced out in air space between them. So many open space between the spongy bone. And some of the main functions of bones, as a review, the main functions are support the body, protection of your organs, movement due to the attached skeletal muscles for running and playing and jumping and so on, storage of minerals and fats, and blood cell formation, okay, in the bone marrow, okay. So those are some of the main parts and the main parts of the skeleton. All right, any other questions? Looks like I'm going to open up to some questions here. I have a few questions here. Yes, I will put. Val says put vocabulary on teams. Yes, I will put some of the vocabulary for the upper and lower parts of the parts of the body, like the bones for the upper parts and lower parts, and the axial and appendicular skeleton. Yes, I will put those on teams. For the project, looks like faces. Can we print a picture of a skeleton and label it? You can, but remember, you're not doing the whole skeleton. You're only doing the upper or lower part or appendicular or axial part, Faith. So you can and do that and then provide information about each type of the bone. Okay? All right. Any other questions here right now before wrap up here for the morning session? I'll be back again on this afternoon at 1 o'clock and at 5 o'clock as well. So any other questions that you may have? This is all due Friday. This is how I've been doing this, since we switched over to online learning. Everything starting on Monday as I introduce the new topic, and then Friday is going to be the day for your project and your brain pop. So you'll have a brain pop on Friday on the skeletal system, and along with this project on the parts of the bones, the types of the bones, either the upper or lower parts of the torso, or your axial or appendicular skeleton. It'll be your choice on that. Okay, all right, and then labeling them and tell me what they do on each of those parts there. Okay, that'll be your project. What's this? Val said we didn't have projects every week at school. I know it's just been different. This is the way things, how we all adapted and changed things this way. So this is how it's been doing. Us teachers are doing things a little bit differently. So we're going through the changes. You're going through the changes. So that's how we're doing it. Okay. Yes, we'll do things some more project based along with the brain pops here too. All right, any other questions about the skeletal system? Any of the parts, like things I went over, the shapes, parts on the appendicular axial skeleton, the joints itself. There are different types of joints in the body. All right, looks like someone said, Vero, please make sure you're focusing on questions. Hi, looks like Chloe checked in here too. Hi, Chloe. We see you on here. Project due Friday, Chloe, on the skeletal system. You go back and listen to some of this stuff. Watch the video Mr. Candelo and I put out as well. Hopefully, you had a chance to watch Mr. Candelo and I doing our dance on a skeletal system. All right. And any other questions you may have? Allie, do you have a question too? You have a question that says what? I'm not too sure what you're asking there. Yeah, make sure when you do the brain pops, guys, that you're not rushing right through to the quiz. I cannot reset the brain pop, so if you get a bad score on brain pop, I can't reset it there. So you make sure that you do the vocabulary first. You watch the video, do the vocabulary, then take the quiz. Okay, so I can't go and reset brain pop, so make sure you're doing that. All right, Val has a question here. No, it doesn't matter what side of the skeleton you do, the upper or lower parts, doesn't matter. Okay. And or appendicular or axial. That could be the other choice there. It looks like me has a question here. Yes, I will put it on Teams on what you have to do. Okay, and I'll put the vocabulary and include some of the parts of the skeletal system on there. Yes, I'll put that up there. And like to include on the lower or upper half. Yes. Okay. And okay, Val has a question here. Are we doing bones and tissues, or doing the stuff inside the skeleton? Mainly the bones, but you can include some things on like ligaments and tendons and stuff like that too. You can include those, and I'll put those in the vocabulary there too on the list. But mainly the bones is what I'm looking for, and what they do and how they function. Okay, any other questions so far? Beryl, Val, Mia, you guys seem to have some questions here. That's good that you're asking. Okay, thanks, Farrell. Thanks for participating today and in the lesson. Thanks for your you know question and answer there. Any other questions that you guys may have? Okay, see you, Talon. Thanks for helping. Thanks for checking in today too and participating as well. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Justin. Or not Justin. It's Allie. Thanks for participating too. Yeah, Val, if you have a printout of, if you have access to a printer, you could print a skeleton picture out as well too with the labeled parts, and I'll provide the vocabulary for that. Remember, you don't have to do all of the whole entire skeleton, only the upper or lower and or axial or appendicular. Okay. Yeah, we don't know yet on that, Vero, about school. School's obviously not in session to the rest of the school year. Okay. Possibly, yeah, for the next school year. Yeah, probably in August. I'm not too sure definitely what's happening with that, but stay tuned on the news and stuff like that. All right, any other questions about the project, about the skeletal system that we learned about today? Now's the time to ask, since I'll be wrapping up for today here any minute. If you don't have any more questions. Okay, Veryl, thanks for checking in today as well. Thank you for being here and participating. I'll be back on later today if you have any more questions. 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock today. Okay, Faith, your question here. How do we get our stuff from the school since we can't go the rest of the year? I don't know what you may have left there, but I'm sure you could get access to something by Mia. Okay, but I'm sure you could get access to getting back into school if you left something there. I know your mom works at school there too, so I'm sure she could, contact somebody there as well. So I don't know what you might have left at school, but your mom could probably contact somebody in the office if you left something there. Okay, well, I am going to wrap up here. If you have any more questions, okay. All right, so I'll be back on a 1 o'clock and a 5 if you have any more questions on the skeletal system, and I'll be putting some notifications and stuff on Microsoft Teams so you know what to do for the project, a little bit more detail there so you have an idea. So just start thinking about the upper or lower parts of the body, or axial or appendicular, the parts that you would like to include in your project there to do. Okay. All right, so I am going to sign off for right now, guys. So thanks for participating, Faith, Val, Mia, some of the other people that were participating in the lesson for today. So thank you and for being here. And you guys are doing a good job keeping up with the work and following in and checking in on my times. So good job with that. And hopefully you guys have a nice, wonderful day. And I'll be in touch with you guys. So again, I'll be back on 1 and 5 today, and through email or Microsoft Teams. Other ways you can communicate with me. All right. All right, guys. So I'm signing off for today for the morning session. So again, I'll see you later on. All right. Have a good day. Goodbye.